Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about a major announcement that came out this week involving our parent company and two very large players in the real estate industry, Redfin and Rocket Mortgage. You may have seen some headlines about it on the news, or you may have heard a little bit about it from corporate, but like many industry announcements, the first reaction is usually, okay, that sounds interesting, but what does it really mean to me? How does it benefit me? And that's really what I want to focus on today. Because the truth is that this partnership isn't just a corporate press release. It represents a much bigger strategy that's unfolding in the real estate industry. For the past decade, the biggest shift in our industry has been that online portals have controlled the consumer search process. We all know this. We all deal with Zillow on a daily basis. Buyers start online, and whoever controls that search experience often controls the lead flow, where those leads go. Now, this new partnership is essentially an attempt to rebalance that system a little bit, giving more visibility, more control, and potentially more leads back to the agents and brokerages who actually list and sell properties. So what we're going to go over in the next few minutes is to walk through what that partnership actually is, at least according to what I see it as, why Compass, Redfin, and Rocket are doing it, what changes agents might start seeing, and most importantly, how you can use this as a tool when you're talking to your buyers and sellers. Now, some of this will roll out over the next month or so and upcoming months, but it's helpful for you to understand where the industry may be heading. Because in real estate, the agents who succeed over time usually aren't the hardest working ones. They're the ones who understand where the market is going before everybody else does. Now, for the past decade, online portals have controlled the consumer search process. Buyers start online, and again, whoever controls that search experience often controls the lead flow. And again, this partnership is set up to hopefully help rebalance that system, giving you more visibility, more control, and potentially more leads coming back to us, coming back to the agents and brokers. So why is this big news? Well, let's start with why this announcement is getting so much attention across the real estate industry and in the press. Our parent company, Compass International Holdings, which now includes brands like Century 21, Coldwell Banker, Sotheby's, and some others, has entered into a 3-year strategic partnership with two very large companies, Redfin and Rocket Mortgage. And each of these companies plays a different role in the real estate transaction. Redfin is one of the largest consumer home search portals where millions of buyers go online to search for homes. It's one of the top in the world. Rocket Mortgage is the largest commercial lender in the United States, and they already have a huge online presence in the financing side of the business. So how do we tap into those and generate more business for our agents? And of course, Compass, and now the brands under it, including Century 21, represent the brokerage and agent side of that transaction. So what this partnership is trying to do is something that a lot of companies in real estate have been trying to accomplish for years. They're trying to connect three major parts of the home buying process into one ecosystem. First, the home search experience. Where do buyers look at properties? And second, the real estate agent who represents that buyer or seller. And third, the mortgage financing that allows the buyer to actually purchase the home. Now, industry analysts sometimes refer to this combination as the holy grail of real estate, because if one system can successfully connect those three things, it can create a much smoother experience for consumers and potentially a very powerful platform for the companies involved. So that's the big picture behind this partnership. But the real question for us isn't what the companies are trying to accomplish. The real question is, what tools or advantages might this create for our Century 21 brokers and agents in the field? And that's where it starts to get a little interesting. So here's the core idea behind the partnership. Compass, and now the brands under Compass International Holdings, including Century 21, have been building a strategy around something called exclusive listings. Now, these are listings that are marketed before they're fully released across all platforms and portals. Now, many of you are already familiar with the idea of coming soon listings. A seller may want to begin marketing the property before it officially goes on the MLS. Now, that can allow them to generate early buyer interest, to build momentum before the official launch, and sometimes test pricing or demand. Until now, many of those coming soon listings were only visible on the brokerage's own website. Zillow doesn't allow them. For example, they might appear on Century21.com or within our own internal brokerage marketing channels. But the challenge with that approach was pretty obvious. The brokerage website simply doesn't have the consumer demand, the consumer traffic, as those big portals. And this new partnership changes that. Now coming soon listings from Anywhere brands and Compass International, including Century 21, can be displayed on Redfin. And that means those listings could potentially be seen by tens of millions of buyers who are already searching on Redfin every month. So instead of a coming soon listing being visible to a relatively small audience, it now has exposure on a major consumer portal. But the important part isn't just the exposure. The important part is how those leads are handled. Because unlike many portal systems, like Zillow, the buyer inquiries generated from those listings are intended to go directly back to the listing agent. And that's a very different model than what many agents have experienced with portals in the past. Now, this is where we can talk about something that every agent in this meeting cares about: leads. One of the biggest frustrations many agents have had with the major portals over the years is what happens when a buyer clicks on one of your listings. You win the listing, you invest the time and effort to market the property. Our brokerage pays the MLS fees and some advertising costs. But when the buyer clicks schedule a showing or request information on one of these major portals, the lead often goes to another agent who paid for advertising on that site. That's been the business model for many of the large portals for quite a while. And while those portals provide valuable exposure, agents sometimes feel like they're paying to buy back their own leads. For OpCity, we're paying referral fees. With Zillow, we're paying upwards of $200 for each lead, good or bad. The model being discussed in this partnership works a little differently. For these coming soon listings that appear on Redfin, the listing page is designed to prominently feature the listing agent's name, the listing agent's photo, and our brand information. And when a buyer submits an inquiry about that property, the lead goes directly back to that listing agent. And even more interesting is that according to the structure that's been discussed, those leads do not carry a referral fee. Now, again, I don't think anything's written in concrete yet, but we're getting there. So in other words, the buyer inquiry goes directly to the agent who actually lists the home. Now, from the consumer perspective, that makes a lot of sense. If you're the buyer looking at a property online, the person who usually knows the most about that property is a listing agent, right? So connecting that buyer directly to the listing agent can create a faster and more informed conversation. For agents, this potentially means two things. First, it creates another channel where your listings can generate direct buyer inquiries. And second, it gives you another point to discuss when you're sitting at a listing appointment with a seller, because you can explain that their home will not only be marketed widely, but will also connect interested buyers directly with you as the agent representing that property. And that's powerful. Now let's talk about the scale of this move, because this is where things start to get really interesting. One of the biggest challenges for any real estate portal is inventory. Buyers go where the homes are. Now, if a website has more listings, more buyers visit it. And if more buyers visit it, it becomes more valuable for agents and for sellers trying to sell their property. And that's one of the reasons Zillow became so dominant over the past decade. But with the merger of Compass and Anywhere Real Estate, which includes brands like Century 21, Coldwell Banker, Sotheby's, Better Homes and Gardens, and several others, this combined company now represents a very large portion of listing inventory across the country. Some might say huge. Because of that scale, this partnership has the potential to add as many as 500,000 additional listings to the Redfin platform. And again, that's a huge number. And these listings aren't just coming from one brokerage. They include properties marketed by Century 21 and Coldwell Banker and Sotheby's and Corcoran and Better Homes and Gardens and several other brands in our network. So what Redfin gains from this partnership is more inventory than it had before. And what Compass and the franchise brands gain is access to a massive consumer audience that is already searching for homes online. It essentially creates a situation where Redfin gains inventory, our agents gain exposure, and buyers gain access to homes earlier in the process. Now, Zillow still has the largest audience in the industry by a wide margin. So this doesn't immediately change the entire landscape, but it does create a much stronger competitor in the portal space. And whenever there's more competition among portals, it can potentially mean more opportunities and better positioning for agents and brokerages like ours. And that leads us to one of the most important parts of this whole strategy. What happens when a buyer actually clicks on one of those listings? Again, the buyer leads go directly back to the listing agent, not whoever's paying the most for that zip code on Zillow. And I can't stress that enough. Now, here's another part of the strategy that's generating a lot of discussion in the industry. When these coming soon listings appear on Redfin, Certain pieces of information that buyers are used to seeing on portals will not appear on the listing page. Specifically, buyers will not see things like days on market, price reduction history, automated home value estimates. Now, if you've been in real estate for more than a week, you probably know why those things matter and why they're so important to sellers. When buyers see a property that's been on the market for a long time, the first thought often is not, maybe it's a great house. The first thought usually is, what's wrong with it? Or, I bet we can get a discount on that house. The same thing happens when buyers see multiple price reductions. Instead of focusing on the home itself, the buyer's attention shifts to negotiating strategy. Compass leadership has argued that these types of data points can sometimes become what we call killers of value, because they influence buyer psychology before the buyer's even seen the property. Now, the idea behind this new listing format is to allow the home to be evaluated based on the property itself, not some algorithmic data or marketing history. Now, let's be clear. Once the property becomes active on the MLS and appears across all platforms, the traditional data points will still exist. But during this coming soon phase, the goal is to create a cleaner presentation of the property. In other words, the buyer is looking at the home itself, the photos, the features, the location, without being influenced by automated estimates or listing history. Some people in the industry love this idea, others are a lot more skeptical. But either way, it represents a different philosophy about how homes are presented online, and it's an important part of the strategy behind this partnership. Now, before we move into the mortgage side of the partnership, it's worth pausing for a moment to talk about the scale of what's being proposed here. I want you to think about this one more time. This is not a small pilot program or a short-term experiment. The agreement between Compass International, Redfin, and Rocket and all of our brands is structured as a 3-year strategic partnership. That's important because it means that the companies involved are planning to invest in building and expanding this system over several years, not just launching a quick marketing feature and moving on. Another piece that's important is the size of the consumer audience involved. Redfin currently attracts around 60 million visitors every month who are actively searching for homes online. So when a coming soon listing appears on the platform, it's being exposed to a very large group of potential buyers who are already in the home search process. Now compare that to the traffic on a typical brokerage website. Even very successful brokerage sites usually only attract a very small fraction of that audience. So one of the big advantages of this partnership is that it allows listings that might normally only appear on internal brokerage channels to be seen by tens of millions of active home shoppers. And the third piece of the scale involves lead generation. Over the course of this 3-year agreement, the companies involved are projecting more than 1 million buyer inquiries coming through the Redfin and Rocket ecosystem and being routed to agents in our network. Now, of course, those leads will be spread across thousands of agents nationwide, and the exact distribution will depend on things like office participation, performance, and listing activity. But the important takeaway is that this partnership is expected to generate a significant new stream of buyer opportunities over time. So when you combine these 3 factors, 3-year strategic alliance, 60 million monthly consumer searches on Redfin, and more than 1 million projected buyer inquiries, you start to see why the industry is paying attention to this announcement. Because it isn't just about marketing listings, it's about building a new pipeline that connects buyers, agents, and financing in one ecosystem. And that leads us to the next piece of the partnership, which does involve Rocket Mortgage and the financing incentives available to buyers through our network. Now, Rocket is the largest residential mortgage lender in the United States, and they already operate a very large online lending platform. As part of this partnership, Rocket Mortgage is going to be offering preferred pricing incentives to buyers who are working with agents within our network, which includes Century 21. There are 2 primary incentives that buyers may be able to choose from. The first option is a 1 percentage point reduction in their mortgage interest rate during the first year of the loan. The second option is a lender credit of up to $6,000 that can be applied towards closing costs or early payments. Now, depending on the size of the loan and the buyer's financial situation, either of those options could represent a meaningful financial benefit for the buyer. From an agent's perspective, the key point here isn't that every buyer will automatically use Rocket Mortgage. Buyers will always have the freedom to choose the lender that works best for them. And there are many excellent lenders in our marketplace. But it's also important to remember that here in our company, we already have a strong in-house lending partnership through 21st Century Lending. They work closely with many of our agents and clients, and they'll also be introducing some very attractive incentives for our buyers as well, which we're going to be rolling out very soon. And of course, when buyers choose to speak with one of our 21st Century Lending loan officers, it helps support the broader ecosystem of services within our firm. Those relationships help offset some of the cost of marketing platforms, technology tools, and support systems that we provide to our agents. So it's important to keep that affiliation going. So while buyers always have the ability to choose the lender that works best for them, it's certainly worth introducing them to our 21st Century Lending as one of their options. Now, stepping back for a moment, the larger idea behind this partnership is something the industry has been trying to accomplish for quite some time. Again, it's about creating a more connected home buying experience. So instead of the home search, the agent relationship, and the financing process all happening separately, this partnership is trying to bring those pieces together into a more integrated system. Now, whether this becomes a major long-term shift in the industry remains to be seen, but it does create another potential advantage that Century 21 agents can offer buyers and sellers in the marketplace. And that again brings us to the next question that many people are asking about this partnership. Will this actually change the competitive balance between the big real estate portals? Because that's where Zillow still plays a very major role. Now, to really understand the strategy behind this partnership, we've got to talk a little bit about the portal landscape in real estate. Right now, there is one portal that still dominates the consumer search market, and that's Zillow. There's also Realtor.com, and there's also Homes.com. Zillow reports roughly 200 million or more visitors every month, which means that for many buyers, Zillow is the first place they go when they start looking for homes. But again, Zillow redirects them to whoever's paying for leads. Now, Redfin is a large portal as well, but its traffic is significantly smaller, roughly 60 million monthly users searching for homes. So in terms of sheer consumer traffic, Zillow still is a very large lead. Because of that, Zillow has built an incredibly powerful business model around selling buyer leads back to agents. Now, in many markets, agents pay Zillow significant amounts of money each month for the opportunity to receive buyer inquiries that came through their portal. As we discussed earlier, some of those leads originate from listings that the agents themselves help create. But by combining a large brokerage network that controls a significant amount of listing inventory, a major home search portal like Redfin, and the financing infrastructure of Rocket Mortgage, the goal is to build an alternative ecosystem that connects buyers, listings, agents, and financing in one place. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, if we put together their marketplace and ours, we're getting awfully close to what Zillow's got. Now, it's important to be realistic here. Zillow is not disappearing tomorrow. They still have the largest audience in the industry. But this partnership creates a much stronger competitor in the portal space than Redfin had on its own. And whenever competition increases among the major portals, it can potentially lead to better opportunities for agents and brokerages because it reduces the likelihood that any single platform completely controls the flow of consumer traffic. So while we're still very early in this process, what we're really watching here is a new battle for consumer attention in the online home search. And that leads to a really important question. How might Century 21 agents actually use this partnership as a competitive advantage when talking to listings, talking to sellers? Because that's where the strategy could start to matter in everyday business. So let's bring it back to what's really practical. Again, how might you actually use this partnership when you're sitting down on a listing appointment talking to a seller? At the end of the day, most home sellers really are asking two basic questions. How much is my home worth is the first one. And the second is, how are you going to market my home to the largest number of qualified buyers? This partnership gives agents another answer to that second question. You can explain to the seller when they list their home, there may be an opportunity to market the property in multiple stages. For example, you might begin with a coming soon marketing phase, where the property is introduced to the market before it officially goes active on the MLS. Now keep in mind, there are a few MLS systems that prohibit that. So you need to discuss it with your manager or team leader. We don't want to have you in front of the board in trouble. Now, during that coming soon phase, the home could potentially be exposed to millions of buyers searching on Redfin and on Century21.com without showing days on market or price reduction history. That allows the property to generate interest early while presenting the home in a very clean way to buyers. Then, once the property goes active on the MLS, it still receives the full exposure across all the major real estate websites, including Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, and others. So instead of just one marketing launch, the property effectively receives two waves of exposure. The other thing that can be helpful to explain to sellers is that inquiries coming through those early listings are designed to connect directly with you, the listing agent. And that means the person who knows the property best is the one responding to potential buyers. Now, every seller and every property is different. Some homes still want to go directly on MLS. That's great. But having multiple marketing options available can give sellers more flexibility in how they introduce their homes to the market. And from a listing presentation standpoint, having additional tools like this can help agents explain why working with a Century 21 professional may provide advantages that other brokerages cannot offer. So let's step back for one last moment and take a look at the bigger picture. What we're seeing here is part of a much larger shift that's been happening in the real estate industry over the past decade. Real estate used to be primarily a local business. Local brokerages controlled the listings. Agents controlled the relationships with their buyers and their sellers. And most transactions started with a conversation between a consumer and a local professional who really knew the market. But today, that process often begins online. Consumers start their search on large platforms that attract millions of visitors every day. And those platforms have become incredibly powerful because they control consumer attention, which this partnership represents as an attempt to rebalance that system a little bit. So again, by combining listing inventory for major brokerage brands like Century 21, Coldwell Banker, and Compass, by combining a consumer search portal like Redfin and a mortgage financing product that's strong, the companies involved are trying to build a more connected ecosystem that brings agents, listings, and buyers back together in the same pipeline. Now, it's still early. We don't know yet exactly how much this will reshape the portal landscape or how other major players will respond. But we do know that the industry is continuing to evolve, and the agents who tend to succeed over time are the ones who stay aware of those changes and learn how to use new tools effectively. So at the end of the day, technology platforms are going to continue to change. Portals will compete. New partnerships will form. One thing hasn't changed. The person who sits at the kitchen table with the seller, explains the market, and earns that listing is still the real estate agent. It's still you. And the agent who controls the listing will always have the strongest position in the transaction. So as these new tools roll out over the coming months, the most important thing is simply to understand how they can help you win more listings and create more opportunities for your clients. Because at the end of the day, that's what this business has always been about. Helping buyers and sellers make one of the most important decisions of their lives. Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one simple idea that's been true in the real estate sector for a very, very long time. No matter how much technology changes, no matter how many portals appear, and no matter how many new partnerships are announced, there's still one golden rule in this business, and that is the person who controls the listing controls the market. Listings create the inventory attracts the buyers, and buyers create the opportunities for additional transactions. And that's why almost every major real estate company eventually focuses on the same thing. How do we help agents to win more listings? And if you look at the Compass, Redfin, Rocket partnership, through that lens, it makes a lot of sense. It's about giving agents more exposure for their listings, more direct buyer inquiries for those people who are out there listing, and more tools to differentiate themselves when talking to sellers. Now, whether this particular strategy becomes the dominant model in the industry, again, remains to be seen. But the larger trend is clear. Companies are trying to build systems that connect search, listings, agents, and financing into one ecosystem. And as agents, the most important thing we can do is stay informed about these changes and understand how we can use them to serve our clients better. Because while technology will continue to evolve, again, the most valuable person in this transaction will still be the one person who can sit across from a buyer and seller and say, here's what the market's doing. Here's the smartest way to move forward. And that's exactly what professional real estate agents do every single day. And another final thought. Imagine a world where one company controlled the entire real estate search process. Every buyer started there. Every listing had to appear there. and every lead had to be purchased back from them. If that ever happened, the conversation with agents might go something like this. Congratulations on winning the listing. Now, if you'd like to speak with a buyer who wants to look at the listing, that'll be $2,500 a month. Now, obviously, that's an exaggeration, but only a slight exaggeration. The point is that competition in the portal space can be very healthy for this industry. When multiple platforms are competing for consumer attention, it creates more innovation, more marketing options, and potentially better opportunities for our agents and our brokerages. So whether this Compass, Redfin, Rocket ecosystem becomes a major force or simply pushes the industry to evolve, it's another example of something we see over and over again in real estate. The landscape keeps changing, but the agents who stay informed and adapt to those changes usually end up in the best position. And at the end of the day, the most powerful asset in real estate still is not the portal. It's the relationship between a trusted agent and their client. So let me say this one more time. No matter how much technology changes, no matter how many portals appear, and no matter how many partnerships get announced, there's still the golden rule I talked about a minute ago in this business. He who controls or she who controls the listings controls the market. Listings create inventory, inventory attracts buyers, and buyers create opportunities for more transactions. So the real estate industry is certainly changing quickly. But the agents who are going to win in the long run are the ones who understand where buyers are searching, how leads are flowing, and how to position themselves to win those listings. And this partnership simply gives our Century 21 agents another set of tools to do exactly that. And like any tool, it only works when you actually use it. So stay informed, understand how these programs work, and think about how they can help you win more listings and serve your clients better. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing in real estate is still the same thing it's always been: a knowledgeable agent guiding a client through one of the most important decisions of their lives. Thanks for watching us today. I hope this was helpful. And again, anything you need in Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Delaware, please call our offices at Century 21 Keim or Century 21 Country Lake Homes or Century 21 Emerald. We'll be happy to help you any way we possibly can. Thanks again.